afternoon. Working? Is that working? Hello?
Yeah, that is. It's on.
Good to go. You're good.
All right. That one working?
No.
That blue one.
Test? Test? No. That worked. That worked? Okay. We'll go with that one. That one worked. The little light's not staying on, but okay. Can you hear all right? Okay. All right. Welcome to the October 31st meeting of the Columbia Rotary Club. As we approach closer and closer to our 100th year celebration. Thank you for being here today. We'll begin today's meeting with music with Rusty DePass and Audrey Brown. Thank you. David Anderson will lead us in the invocation.
When I agreed to do the invocation, I all of a sudden realized that today was Halloween. And most people really don't understand the meaning of Halloween. Halloween was the day before All Saints' Day, and it's called All Hallows Eve. And in my tradition, in my church, we always remember the saints who've gone before us, who've passed away in the year before. And I think it's appropriate maybe we take just a moment today to recognize those members of the club and their families that may have passed during the last year. So maybe we have just a moment to remember in silence. Amen. As I pray in my tradition, I invite you to pray in yours. Lord, we give you thanks for those members who have served so well in the club, who moved on from this life to the next in the past year. Today we pray that we could receive your special blessings because we're committed to be a real service organization to help humankind. May each one of us in our daily routine come to know the joy of caring and sharing with others that are not as fortunate as we. May our motto that includes sharing, caring, serving be for us a lifestyle of service. Thank you, Father, for the gift of Rotary and for each other. Bless the food we have eaten as we nourish our bodies and our minds. May we be ever mindful of those in need. Help us to provide food for the hungry, to heal the wounds of hatred with our love, comfort those in sorrow, and bring peace to those living in areas of unrest and destruction. Through our service to all, we thank you for all your gifts. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, David. Blake Buchanan will come up and lead us to introduce our Rotarians and guests.
Welcome. Today we have one visiting Rotarian, T.R. Parrish from Lexington. Visiting once again, thank you very much. And if you have a guest, could you please stand and it's like you're going to get to pass the mic around.
Sounds like it.
Thank you.
I'm Amy Beth with the Five Points Association, and as my guest today I have Lauren Strickland, who's our Executive Assistant.
I'm Bob Prescott. I have again Steve Elliott with me. He's been with me several times. He formerly worked with Tri-Centurion. Would y'all find him a job so I quit buying his meals?
I'm John Monk with the state newspaper, and today I have as my guest Cynthia Roldan, reporter. She's here to cover our august Honorable Dan Johnson. Dan knows this, so he knows he's always on the record with what he says.
I've got a lot to say, John.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, that's all for our visitors, though, correct?
Do you have another?
Wait, Vance
Oh,
has one.
okay. We got one visitor over here.
I'm Vance Eaton, and I'm going to be introducing the solicitor, but we also have today our Deputy Solicitor, Dan Goldberg. He's in charge of the Richland County office.
And John did promise me I could jump up here for just one quick minute to remind everybody about the Salvation Army bell ringing, reforming teams. I still need team captains. We look pretty staffed at Greens. I don't know what that says about our club, but I need some help at Walmart on Forest Drive and Divine Street. So they'll make me come over there where you're at.
Thank you.
Bob Bourne will do health and happiness for us.
Where's Frank Brown? Raise your hand, Frank. Frank and his wife Sarah were recently honored last Thursday at a meeting of the South Carolina Association of Fundraising Professionals. They were honored as outstanding philanthropists. So thank you. John Monk, you brought a newspaper person. A lot of people get their news from the internet. I still like to hold a newspaper in my hand. And one reason I like newspapers, without newspapers, we would not have headlines like these. And these are actual photocopies of some headlines that I found. This came from England. Diana was still alive hours before she died. Here's another one. Federal agents raid gun shop, find weapons. Parents keep kids home to protest school closure. And I really like this one. Total lunar eclipse will be broadcast live on Northwoods Public Radio. Well, there are more of those things. Preachers get asked to do a lot of things. There's this young guy who was new in town, new in his church, and the funeral home called him up one day and said, old Linton Fletcher died. I know you don't know him, he's not in your church, his family's not in your church, but they came to the funeral home and asked us to find a preacher who would do his funeral. And we want you to do it. I know you don't know him. And he said, well, yeah, I'll do it. They said, well, it's a graveside service, and it's tomorrow at noon. And he said, okay, where is it? He said, well, you go out Route 42, about 4 miles from town, then you take, there's a little paved road you take to the right after you've gone about 4 miles, and the burial, the graveside service will be behind this little white church out there, and Undertaker won't be there. He will have already gone out and set everything up. He won't be there, but you go out and you'll find it. So the next day, he headed out in time enough to get there in plenty of time. He drove out on Route 42, he found a little paved road, he turned. He was a little worried, he wasn't sure where he was, but all of a sudden over there to his right, he saw this little white church, and sure enough in the back, there was a backhoe that dug this big hole. The guy sitting on the backhoe, and two guys with shovels standing beside him. And beside it, there was, the gray concrete box. And sure enough, he said, I found the right place. And he pulled up, and he said, I'll wait for a while. Well, 12 o'clock came, family hadn't showed up. 12:15, he waited, and he waited, and he waited. Nobody showed up, no family, no friends, nothing. Finally, he said to himself, well, I can't wait here all day, but out of respect for the dead, out of respect for the deceased, I'll go ahead and have the funeral service. So he gets out of his car, he walks over to where the backhoe was seated, and the guy on the backhoe, two standing beside him with shovels, and he said, would you please take off your hats? And they did. And he went over and he conducted the full funeral service. I mean, he read scripture from the Old Testament and the New Testament. He had the prayers, and he read the 23rd Psalm, and he said the Lord's Prayer, and he sung a verse or two of the old rugged cross. And he didn't know the guy, but he said some words about God's goodness and all of this stuff. And then he went over to the pile of dirt and picked up some dirt. He sprinkled it around appropriately. And then he had a benediction, got his car and left. And as he was leaving, one of the guys standing beside the backhoe said, that was really something. And the guy on the backhoe said, yeah, that was something. He said, I've been installing these septic tanks for 20 years. And that's the damnedest thing I've ever seen in my life. I guess it could happen. Well, David has pointed out that it is Halloween, and that today Halloween would be nothing if it were not for the day after All Saints' Day. The church in 835 AD proclaimed November 1st as All Saints' Day. And according to the superstitions of the time, on the day or the evening before all of the saints, the good people of the earth, were honored, according to the superstitions, this was the last chance that the worst things in the world would have to flaunt themselves before being banished into outer darkness. And so that's how we got Halloween, the evil, the witches, and all this stuff could be out in full force before honoring. It marked really a transition from the worst in the world to the best in the world. Now, let me tell you what I think. Why don't we let this day, Halloween, be a time in which we get rid of the worst that's in us? Prejudice, greed, hate, selfishness, you name it. Let today be the day we get rid of the worst that's in us, so that tomorrow we can strengthen and focus our attention on the best that is in us. Compassion, understanding, unity, forgiveness, unconditional love. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Health and happiness is always worth waiting for. That's very good, Bob. Thank you. I feel all the bad stuff just flowing out of me right now. Hopefully I can start over tomorrow being a better person. Before we get to you, Trevor, I wanted to mention to you, and I'm sure you're already aware of this, you got your first Rotary Club statement by email this past week. And that was something that's been a long time coming. I'm thrilled and excited that we finally got it done. I hope did everybody get an email statement? Everybody got one? That's great. That's great. System worked. Debbie was a little anxious when she hit that button and said send, but it worked. There are probably a few that didn't get them, but that's a great thing. We're moving into the 21st century in our club. I will tell you this, we know there's some members who prefer not to use email as their communication, and so those of you who would prefer to get a paper statement for whatever reason, on an ongoing basis, we can do that. If you will just see Debbie, let her know, send her a note, call her, whatever, and tell her that you would prefer to keep getting paper statements. that can happen. So otherwise, if we don't hear from you, it will come via email from now on. So next, Trevor Bowers is going to come up and tell us about a new program that he's worked out, or a rerun of an older program, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. President. Quick announcement, again, Trevor Bowers with the Membership Committee. That's actually an old program that we're going to be reinstating. If y'all remember the VIP cards that we did last year. For those of you who don't remember those, for non-family member guests, in order to promote members bringing guests, we're going to pick up the tab for the non-family member guests. And we should, Carrie said, we should have little cards for you members next week, and they should be at the Sergeant of Arms desk. This is particularly timely for me as I'm inviting 2 guests next week. So, I'm very happy with that. So if you have any questions, please come up and talk to me afterwards, but next week we should have those cards for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Your board set a goal of 500 guests for the year, and we're running a little behind on that. So we hope that you'll take advantage of this VIP guest program, pick up a card next week, and invite a guest on the house. So please help us encourage more guests to come and hear great speakers like the one we have today, who will tell us all kinds of wonderful information that we didn't know before. Another thing I wanted to tell you that's drifted out of my mind. Amy Beth, I'll let you come up and tell us a little bit about the Jack Van Loan statue dedication.
Thank you. Like I said before, I am with the 5 Points Association, and we talked a little briefly at the end of last week's meeting, but I wanted a more formal few minutes to share with you what exciting projects we're doing in 5 Points. As the director, I'm excited to share with you that to commemorate our centennial, thanks to our very generous partners at the City of Columbia and Richland County, and in particular this club, we are unveiling our Centennial Plaza on Friday, November 11th. As a member of this club, I want to share with you why that's important. And that is because the plaza is 2-part feature. One is a kugel, which is one of those giant granite rotating balls. They have one at NASA. That's probably one of the most popular ones. Ours will be 30,000 pounds of granite and will stand 6 feet tall. It will be the largest in the state, and we're very excited for what that means in terms of driving tourism to our community. The other portion of the fountain will be a tribute to a very special person in my life and in many of yours, a member of this club, Colonel Jack Van Loan. Jack was a POW in Vietnam for 6 years, and this is a very, very small way for us to pay tribute to something that many of us will have no idea how that affected him. So I sincerely hope that you will take a few minutes out of your time next Friday, November 11th. There is an invitation on your table. We'll have complimentary valet seating, since parking can be tough, I hear, sometimes in 5 Points, between 2 and 2:30, so please take advantage of the complimentary parking. And then the owners of the gourmet shop, Linda and Dennis Hildner, are hosting a beautiful reception afterwards at their home for complimentary champagne and a chance to meet and see Jack. But again, I cannot thank you, the members of this club, the board. Thank you for your help, and we appreciate your contribution to the plaza. We'll see you on the 11th.
Just to let you know, we have picked out 4 projects to undertake for our centennial year, and that is one of the projects. We are about to embark, very closely in the next week or so, embark on a fundraising project to cover the cost of this project and 3 others, and we'll be updating you on that very soon. But this is the first of those 4 projects, and we're honored to be able to honor Jack, and particularly because of his time with our club and his office serving as president of the club. So anyway, I hope that all of you can come on the 11th and participate in that dedication. The other thing I wanted to mention to you, the invitations for our centennial celebration will go out in about the next week or 10 days. And you will have an opportunity to send a check back in or pay by credit card. We will ask you, if you can, to provide a check to the club. You can pay here when you come to a meeting. That will save us credit card fees. And we are trying through that event to raise some money to give a check to the Rotary International president. One of his close family members had polio, and so he is very committed to eradicating polio around the world. And our board has decided that we will give a check to Polio Plus in honor of the international president when he is here. And so this event is partially a fundraiser to generate the money needed to write that check for the international president. So anything you can do to help us avoid fees that would come out of the money from that event, that would be great. So you can either pay by check here when you come, or send a check back with your when you get your invitation with your RSVP card. Thank you. I would like to introduce to you Chris Hinchy. Chris is a new member of our club, and in keeping with our program, come on up, Chris, to have an opportunity for us to meet some of our new members and some of our older members. I want to introduce Chris to you, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself.
Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate me giving some time to introduce myself. I am the headmaster of Heathwood Hall. Probably thanks to the positive coverage from the state, I actually work for Marcus Lattimore now. I'll be reporting back to him after the meal today. Thanks again for welcoming me. I want to thank Mason Hardy for introducing me to the club and hosting me to a few lunches. I know Margaret Clarkson, who doesn't appear to be here, also hosted me. I'd like to thank her also. Frequently when I get up to talk, I'm talking about the school, so talking about myself is something that I don't do very often. I grew up in Connecticut, in a small mill town called Norwich, Connecticut. Parents of a lawyer and a computer programmer analyst. Was lucky enough to matriculate to Trinity College in Hartford, where I played basketball. And that kind of led to my next career, which was in 1991. And I always tell this people so they can get a little bit of an idea about how old I am. I usually get carded for Monopoly pieces at McDonald's. But I've been teaching since 1991. I've been in education for 26 years. And started out at a boys' boarding school and worked at 2 boys' boarding schools, one for 3 years and one for 19. I was coaching basketball, baseball, and I was a science teacher. I had been a biology major in college. Loved that work. In some ways, this is my first foray into kind of being in a club, because as a boarding school teacher, your life is full. You teach classes on Saturday, you're doing dorm duty 3 or 4 nights a week. You're coaching 3 sports and you're teaching 4 classes, so they keep you busy. But when you're 22, right out of college, if they're going to give you 3 meals and let you pitch batting practice and get paid for it, that's a good job. It becomes a little bit harder though when you have kids. And so as my life began to progress, my wife went to law school at the University of Connecticut, which in the last couple seasons has made it a little bit hard to root for the Gamecocks. Though Asia had gone to Heathwood, I did put on the Yukon Blue at a couple of those games. They've lost some of their firepower, so I think the Gamecocks' turn is coming very soon. But she matriculated from law school, our kids got a little bit older, we were looking for the next challenge. And I ended up down here in Columbia at Heathwood. One of the things that I wanted to do was to change my life, to have a number of different career challenges. Get away from all boys school education, leave New England, and teach at a co-ed school. And Heathwood afforded me that opportunity. But there was something that really drove me to be down here, which was to be an educator in a community environment. One of the things that a boarding school taught me was that a key component of an educational experience are the adults that are there working with you. And I think for all the kind of newfound educational programs out there, the connection between an adult and a young person is really the key to educational growth. And I found that at Heathwood. And so made this big move, 900 miles, my wife, my 3 boys, I have a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old. You will know us if you're driving through Shandon and you see me walking with 3 blue-eyed redheads. We also, I would advise you to go buy stock in Coppertone. We do not tan particularly well. We love Shandon. We're excited about Halloween tonight. And really it was the community atmosphere that brought me to Heathwood, and teachers that kind of cared about kids, but to also not be in a boarding school. To be able to drive home on a Friday and not have dorm duty was a huge plus. And in a boarding school, you sometimes have knocks on your door at 2 in the morning, and usually that's not good. Usually your Sunday is toast if you get a knock at 2 a.m. on Saturday. But it's been a great experience in Columbia. As I said, one of the big differences in the Northeast, it's hard to find a city with intact residential neighborhoods as you can in Columbia. We've enjoyed being in Columbia. We lived in Salisbury, Connecticut for 19 years, where there was one blinking yellow light, about 5,000 people, and as is the only way you measure how far you are from wherever is, we were 40 minutes from a Walmart. So we were out there. And we've enjoyed being closer to more things. We've enjoyed 3 seasons of the year. I'm still struggling with July. That is a hot month. I do find the need to escape occasionally, but I've been told I will eventually get used to it. I'm no longer coaching. I was a basketball coach. That's what pulled me in education. I was a head coach for 12 years. Sent players off to Utah, UMass, Tulane, George Washington, and Oklahoma. Also coached kids that went to Division III schools like Williams, Amherst, Trinity, and Wesleyan. It was enjoyable, but it was really what pulled me into education. And I do have one favor to ask you. We have just started a new program at Heathwood called Columbia Connections. And one of the things we're looking to do is to get students off campus more and kind of figuring out some of their passions. And far too often, school measures a narrow band of aptitude. Sitting still, working memory, listening skills, writing, being able to speak clearly, but things like risk-taking, creativity, entrepreneurial spirit, EQ, kind of emotional quotient with people, are skills that make you very successful after. And I've been teaching long enough to see kids who struggled in high school be wildly successful later. We're looking to develop a program where we get kids in contact with people in health, technology, military, higher ed, transportation, business, you name it, so that they can kind of uncover their passion and their skill set. And we would love to get you on campus to talk to our kids, whether it's a 2nd grade class, a 7th grade class, or a 10th grade class. We feel that the Midlands community has so much to offer our young people. And one of the things that we need to do is make our kids better citizens, so that when they return to a Charlotte, a Columbia, an Atlanta, a Pittsburgh, that they know how the town works, they know how to connect with people, and they are better educated. The world is going to require nimble thinkers, and I'm excited to be at a school where we're doing that. So I'm excited to meet you all more closely, but if you think you have an opportunity that we could introduce our kids to, I would urge you to connect with me. We'd love to put our kids in touch with you. John, thanks again.
Thank you, Chris. I think we can tell we've got a member with a lot of energy there, and he did change his environment considerably from Salisbury, Connecticut to Columbia, South Carolina. That's quite a change, and welcome. I do understand that connection between adults and students in school, and I think all of us have had one of those experiences with a mentor in school, a coach, a teacher, whatever, and how valuable that is. And what we could do, I would hope, Chris, is help your students understand the value of service above self. And we have a lot of people out here who are selfless givers, and maybe we can help make that connection. It's an important connection in life. Giving back is so important. All right, we're going to move right along here. Vance Eaton will introduce our speaker today.
Good afternoon. My name is Vance Eaton. I'm an assistant solicitor in the 5th Circuit Solicitor's Office. It's my pleasure to introduce my boss and fellow Rotarian, the elected solicitor of the 5th Circuit, the Honorable Dan Johnson. The solicitor went to the Citadel and University of South Carolina for law school. As an attorney, he's done my job and served as an assistant solicitor. He also worked for 8 years at Richland County Sheriff's Department, notably as Sheriff Lott's chief deputy and legal counsel, which I think gives him some perspective on how he runs our office, which you may pick up on today. In 2008, he was one of 3 finalists for the job of the Chief of Police for the City of Columbia. The solicitor is a major in the South Carolina Air National Guard. And in fact, I first met him when we were both serving in the Army in the same unit, in the reserves, before he gave in to the allure of the Air Force, shall we say. He has served in uniform for 13 years and he's a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He has many awards and accolades. I'll just hit a couple highlights. You'll all be interested to know that he was selected to attend a Rotary group study exchange and spent 6 weeks in Sweden speaking on community policing. Another impressive detail is that at the age of 22, he received the Order of the Palmetto for acts of heroism and bravery. I'm pretty sure I know what that's about, but perhaps during question and answer, if the Spirit moves someone to ask him, we might hear that story. Finally, I'll just say as someone who has worked under his leadership for about 4 years, that he runs an outstanding organization. As you'll see from the presentation, the office is well-resourced, and he creates an environment in which we can accomplish the mission, and his people can thrive professionally. A very quick anecdote about his leadership. He walked into a conversation that was happening in the office one day with a coworker, and we have a great relationship with law enforcement. In this particular conversation, we were talking about some evidence, and it'd be fair to say we were griping a little bit about something. And he said, "Okay, I hear you. Now what are you going to do about it?" And the next thing I knew, we had written and directed and produced an entire training video on the things that we were talking about to fix the problem. It's an honor to work for the Fifth Circuit. We try cases, we serve the public, and we have the awesome responsibility of exercising discretion in some very tough situations that impact people and the community. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Dan Johnson.
Can everybody hear me? I've got a Fitbit on, so I got to get steps. So I'm kind of a mover. Can everybody hear me? Because I don't know that I need a microphone. I grew up in a loud family. First of all, I wanted to thank y'all for allowing me to be here today. It's a tremendous honor to me. I have looked forward to speak before this body really for a very long time, and there's a reason why that is. I did serve as a group study exchange member back in 2004, and quite frankly, it was then that I decided that I might be able to run for solicitor one day. So the group study exchange program kind of changed my life in a lot of different ways. So I'm very grateful to have had that experience. And as a result, truly it's part of the reason why I'm a solicitor today. Because as a kid that grew up in Laurel, Maryland, I never thought that I would leave my hometown. So having the opportunity to travel overseas, and this was really at the beginning. I'd been out of the country one time before that for the military in Germany. But that program opened up a world that I had never seen before, and really allowed me to see some possibilities that, quite frankly, I didn't see. So I'm very grateful to this body. Are there some people who can't hear me?
Yeah, okay.
I thought I was doing well. So I'm very grateful to be here. So I am the Fifth Circuit Solicitor. There are 16 circuit solicitors in South Carolina. I have the fifth, which is Richland and Kershaw counties. So there are about 422,000 people. I'll use this PowerPoint. Of course, in the military, I learned not to have anything in my hand unless I'm skilled at its use. So that's why, that's a rule. Most people who serve know that, right? So that's why I don't have this little thing in my hand, but I'll attempt to use it. But quite frankly, I'll cover the slides, and what I really want to do is I want to be able to answer any questions that you may have. I'm glad John's in the room because a lot of times you read things or hear things that are not as accurate as they would be as if you heard it from me. So I'm here to answer your questions. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the office. Okay, so we have 42 lawyers in the office. I have 122 to 127 employees. It kind of fluctuates, and that doesn't account kind of the community programs we do with interns and law clerks and things of that nature. We bring in about 120 cases a week, general sessions level cases, and we move somewhere in the area of 120, 130 cases, usually around 200 a week. People don't really have a picture of that volume, but the volume is tremendous. Did I do that right? I did. Okay. So we prosecute about 10,000 cases a year. And when I say prosecute, it could happen in various ways, both in the courtroom and in intervention programs that we run. So the volume is high. We are pushing a lot of water through a very small pipe, through 42 lawyers. And I think a lot of times people don't really realize that. So there it is. That's the population, 121 employees currently. And you see the number of lawyers we have. And of course, we have a pretty large support staff as well. Okay? So that's what our numbers looked like last year. And the reason why that's important, that's our mission statement. The reason why that's important is that prosecution is a very interesting thing. And it's interesting in this way. If I decide to prosecute, of course, the victim is very happy. And the defendant or his family or her family feel like they got hosed, right? If I decide not to prosecute, of course, the defendant who's accused, their family, really happy, right? And then the victim, of course, feels like they got hosed, right? That's kind of how that works. So in essence, really in the court system, a lot of people leave and somebody's going to be unhappy in some way. And all of those people generally live in our community. So there's some tough decisions that have to be made. And so that's what the solicitor does, right? So people say, what is a solicitor? Why do we call it a solicitor? There's another term for it, the district attorney. Right? They call them the district attorney, state's attorney, commonwealth attorney in some places. We use the old English term, solicitor, which I personally like. Some people, on the other hand, want to change it so it's more familiar with people, because the term, quite frankly, is one that we hadn't used, no one else uses in the country. Okay, so our mission statement's up there. We did some very interesting things. When I first took office, I'm in my second term. I probably should have said that earlier. It's a 4-year term. We did some interesting things when I took office. We changed the entire structure of our office. And I changed it for a lot of reasons, but what we did was we broke up the office among our 42 attorneys to reflect the law enforcement region. So I know Sheriff Lott comes here sometimes, and the chief also as well. I think you hear from him once a year as well. So essentially we have Region 1, which makes up the lower side of our county. We have Region 2, which is the Columbia Mall area. Region 3, that's off, if you go off Monticello Road in that area. Region 4 is the Broad River Road area. Region 5 is the whole city. Region 6 is out where I live, out in the Blythewood area, northeast area. And Region 7 is kind of broken off on that area off Street and Eagle. So those areas reflect the same regions that law enforcement reflects. Why do we do that? One, so that police officers only need to know 4 or 5 lawyers as opposed to having to go to 42 different people in the shop. And that relationship is very important, because you can't give people guidance and legal advice if you don't know them. You don't understand them. And the other reason, and perhaps I think it's probably more important, is so that people in those communities would only have to know 4 or 5 lawyers that are going to get those cases. And I think that's really important. So when you see something happen in your neighborhood and it's a general sessions level case, then you know that those cases are going to go to a certain group of lawyers. And I think that's really important. There's another reason that relates to county council, so that county council can see the resources that are in their specific districts. And I think that's important too, because quite frankly, when I took office, our office was way under-resourced. We had 12,000 pending cases back then. We had a lot of problems. We only had 20-some lawyers. We didn't have enough resources to make the mission happen, in my opinion. And so we did a lot of things, both in Richland and Kershaw counties, To give you an example, I know there's some bankers and businessmen in the room. To give you one example, in Kershaw County, we've done a great deal of work over there, but we had one lawyer over there. The conviction rate was about 34%. This is not a knock on my predecessor because he gave me my start. It was the resources that we had available at that time. And we were spending about $500,000 and they were paying in $60K. So we were upside down. So we moved on and we made some things happen. You know, we all have different focuses. So we were able to resource this thing, and I think it'll get where it needed to go. So you can see a map of the county, and that's what it looks like. We just talked about it. Those are some numbers. I track all kinds of things. You like that? They are numbers. Those numbers that's related to our murder cases, right? I hear a lot of things in the community, and we talk about decisions I make regarding what those sentences ought to look like when we're making recommendations for murder cases. I track metrics across myself and across my predecessor. And I started doing that because you'd hear things in the community where people would say, hey, this isn't happening like it was. Johnson's not doing this or Johnson's not doing that. I made a decision on a pretty tough murder case, and it was a 30-year offer on a girl who had been abducted. We couldn't find her, and there were some people who complained about that number. Of course, we didn't have the evidence. We needed to get that from the defendant, and he never would have given it to me unless I made the deal. But what I did was I went back and tracked those metrics to see what those average sentences were, both for myself and my predecessor, to see if we were right in the ballpark. Of course we were. So that stuff is important. The numbers aren't as important, truth be told, as the recognition that we deal with a lot of people, both as victims, as witnesses, as suspects. We deal with pretty much everyone in the community. Crime touches everybody in some way. And as a result, you will have some contact with our office. We do a lot of programs, and I really want to talk to you about some of them today. Obviously, we prosecute a lot of violent crime, murders, armed robberies, rapes, and burglaries. But we also have a lot of programs, and in Richland County, we've got some really important ones. So we have our basic ones, pretrial intervention. We have in both counties. We have juvenile, PTI, in both counties. We also have things like drug court. So I run, a lot of people don't really realize this, but I run a drug court program that helps people that are addicted to drugs, help them get clean in lieu of prosecution. And it works. The people who go through that drug court program do not come back. It's just as simple as that. And I have 2 adult programs, one here in Richland, one in Kershaw. And I also have a juvenile drug court program for kids that are addicted to drugs. And so these people who run around, and this is Johnson editorializing just quickly, talking about how marijuana can affect people, come to drug court. See these kids that are hooked and can't go to class and do the stuff they're supposed to do. And then when they get clean, they're able to excel in school. So that's just Johnson's opinion based on what I see. We also have some other programs that I think you'll like. We created the first Veterans Court program, and truth be told, when I created that program, there's a man in the room named Buck Schuler who served in Vietnam. His jet is, when you go down to the Citadel, his jet is parked on the parade deck. He's a member of your club. His jet's name is Annette after his wife. He put that jet there in honor of all the people that didn't come back in Vietnam. And 6 years ago, I promised him every time I had an opportunity, I'd tell that story. And I have. But the reason why I'm telling you that, I got a little off track, but we created the first Veterans Court program to help veterans, people who go off to serve overseas. They don't always come back the same. Sometimes they run into a little trouble and run afoul of the law. And what we do in that program is we try to link them back to the VA services that they have earned as a result of their service and get them back on track using progressive discipline through a judge. So if they don't go to the meetings, the judge put them in jail for a night. Right? But the objective is to get them clean and get them housing. So when we started that program, we had 5 guys come through. They were homeless, they were jobless, and they were addicted. And then in about 18 months, one went back to school, but they all had housing. They had jobs, except for the guy who was going back to school, and they were not addicted. They were clean and able to matriculate back into society. So we started that program, I guess, about 4 or 5 years ago. It works. It's an incredible program. Greenville has since copied it, and I think Charleston's doing a little program trying to push it out across the state. We also have a program called Worthless Check. So essentially what we do is, has anybody ever had a bad check written to them? Right? And then you try to chase them down and they make all kinds of excuses. They don't come back to see you, and you end up going to court. It takes up more time than the check was, and it's kind of a pain in the butt, particularly if you rent to people. Well, this program, what we do is we run down the check for you for free. So we'll send a letter comes from me, and for some reason, when I send them a letter, they almost always pay. So there's a fee that goes back to the government. You get the amount of the check plus the bank fees. We have collected about $2 million during the course of this program in my tenure that goes back into the local community, local businesses. People get their money back. And we also do it for the treasurer. So people write bad checks to the treasurer for the taxes, and we recover that for them as well. So it's an important program. We also have, there's 2 in the state. There's a DUI program I'm going to touch on real quick and open up for questions because there's only 2. I have one, and there's one out in Florence. And here's the issue. You hear a lot about DUI, right? So you have a guy who's DUI third. DUI third carries 3 to 7 years. So mandatory minimum 3, maximum 7. Of course, that's true even if the guy has a DUI 14. So let's say he gets 7, it's non-violent, so he's only going to do a third of that, so he does 2.5 years or so in jail, right? And then what happens? He gets out of jail and what? He's still a drunk, right? And then he gets another one, eventually he kills somebody, and then he gets about 12 or 14 years. So what this program is designed to do is take those people and try to get them clean. Because that's the problem, right? You're talking to them and you're talking to the alcohol, right? And that a lot. So we use these things called SRAM devices, and you put it on somebody's leg, it checks for the presence of alcohol every 30 minutes, transdermally, so through the skin. We have technology today. We don't always know how to use it. You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed at what it can do, right? So this program is great because they keep that on for about a year. And we know if they take a drink. So the objective is to get it clean. It's an awesome program. It's working. And we're doing a lot with it. There are a lot of things going on in the county. So there's some other programs I have. Alcohol education to help students. We were talking about 5 points earlier, Amy. And sometimes you have kids that drink, right? All over, not just at 5 points, right? We all did, many of us did. And this program, if they get arrested, what this program does is it teaches them about the dangers of alcohol. And then if they successfully complete the program, it ends in a dismissal so they don't lose their scholarships. Because there's a bigger program, something going on in the school. Messing that up hurts. So that program's a great program to do that. We have the TEP program for lead-foot, so those people who speak too much. Youth arbitration is a great program that helps kids. They get in trouble for minor crimes. It used to be in schools, but we expanded it outside the schools. It's got a 92% success rate. And that's that they don't come back. Because most people don't know if a kid gets in to DJJ, there's a 50% likelihood that they'll stay in the system. It's a big number, and it costs us a lot of money. And so this program keeps them out of the system, and they don't come back. And it's one of the few programs, incidentally, that's endorsed by the NAACP, and it just works. It's a good program. These are the other programs. I didn't talk about homeless court. That's another program that's a first in South Carolina that we started that deals with homelessness. We're just a small part of that issue. I think that we've seen some things nationally regarding Columbia and how we handle the homeless. This is a program that we introduced to try to be part of a larger solution. But essentially what it tries to do is link them with these nonprofits, that will help them get back on their feet and address whatever issues they have, whether it be mental illness or homelessness. And then what we do is we will forgive the fees and fines. And people say, why would you do that? Well, here's why we do it. They're not paying them anyway. They're homeless. And what happens is on a $350 ticket, they go to jail and they're sitting in the jailhouse at $65 a day for 30 days. So it costs us more money than the ticket. So they don't pay the ticket, they sit it out in the jailhouse, and then they come back when it gets cold and they go back in. And so what we're trying to do is address that problem and get those people stable so they're not coming back in. Because the reality of it is when you look at the cost of law enforcement going down dealing with them every day, prosecution, and then when they take them over to the hospital, it's costing us millions of dollars. And it's just a revolving door. It's really a hotel for those people. So we're trying to fix that problem. All right. So I think, and of course we have expungements and juvenile mental health court's another one that we started. We're one of the first to address children with mental illness. We also have a social worker in our office to deal with those issues. I will open it up to the floor for any questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. There's a new wave of website information. If someone gets charged with an offense before they even go to trial or any issue, some website folks are getting those mug shots and they're posting them online, and then they come back for a fee. They will remove those, and it makes it very difficult for someone who ultimately is innocent to ever get a job if they don't need the resources. So I see this more often. It's really unfair, and I think that these website folks should be have your attention. I'll say that.
Well, see, you have some difficult issues that are packed in that, because you have some press issues. But let me just cut to the chase on that. I think you're right, particularly because there's a statute when you have these things expunged. So if you're innocent and we don't prosecute it, right, you're entitled to a free expungement. And the problem comes in when that thing gets expunged and then somebody goes and types in their little Google search and sees your name and mugshot up there, you're not going to get hired. So one of the things that we do in my office is I run that stuff down because of that statute. If you show me where that stuff is coming up, because I don't have the resources to search for everybody, computer agent, that kind of thing, I'll send a letter and say, hey, you might want to think about taking that down. I'm coming. Right? So we do some things with that. I think you're right. The legislature is also working on that issue. Yes, ma'am. And I know you're a reporter, but I'm still attacking the question. What do you got?
You mentioned you had 42 prosecutors. I'm just curious. I know the legislature appropriated money last year for additional prosecutors to help you guys lessen the load. Is 42 the number that you have now, and you're going to hire, be able to hire more, or is that the number that you're at now?
The legislature did appropriate some money for us to do some specific things in terms of hiring prosecutors. So interestingly enough, all solicitors' offices are not created equally. Okay, so they're funded by, like for instance, I'm funded by both counties, and also I have funding from the state. So over time, solicitors' offices have been built differently. So to answer your first question, yes, I'm going to add a couple more, but truth be told, the way our office is built, it's a little different. So my predecessors like Jim Anders, Dick Harpootlian, or even Barney, they always looked at this as a lawyer problem, right? So, we need some more lawyers in here, and they did, based on where they were, right? But anybody who practices law, or even a doctor's office, knows that you got to have paralegals, you got to have investigators, right? So our issue is a twofold problem. One, we need that underlying support staff because the paperwork these days is voluminous. And then you add to it body cameras and our ability to watch all that video that people are pumping out. Coupled with the fact that even if I got those resources, I don't have anywhere to put them. I have a space problem. So yes, we're going to add more based on the money that was appropriated, and it was awesome that the legislature did that for us because a lot of us needed various things. So mine is more infrastructure related. I'll be working up 2 murder cases, and if they both get continued, I'm tapped out in terms of the resources, the ability to serve all the subpoenas that need to be done, to make sure that the paperwork has been processed and the defense has everything that they need to be able to make that happen.
Dan, thanks for the question. Years ago.
She was more aggressive.
I'm in the back. Hey, how are you? Years ago, not only South Carolina, but states nationwide, somebody got the bright idea to wipe out a lot of monies going to mental health. And so our prisons have become holding tanks for people who've committed crimes, and it was related, a lot of it's related to mental health issues. And nothing is changing with that. So when y'all get these folks that you know are there because of mental health issues, what in the world do you do with them?
And that's interesting because Columbia has an interesting issue related to this. Because the state's mental resources, most of them are here, what happens among the 15 other solicitors is if they adjudicate them, let's say you're guilty but mentally ill, they adjudicate them and they'll dismiss that charge and they'll be here. And so what happens is they let them out and they're on our streets. So as a result, you know, of course, since I'm in Richland and Kershaw, we have these and we don't dismiss them. Right? Because I know they're going to get out and they'll just be on the street. So the first thing is, one of the things we're doing is, obviously I talked earlier about having an adult mental health court to deal with some of these issues. And we also have created the juvenile mental health court program. But you're right, I mean, there's not enough resources being related to mental health. And as a result, we deal a lot with people with mental illness. So it not only taxes the criminal justice system itself, but it also taxes our resources in terms of the people that call up every day, or that send us emails, you know, these crazy emails that they're trying to figure out, and they really just have mental illness. So it's taxing our system really across government, dealing with some of these things. And truth be told, there's just not enough resources devoted to it. And oh, I see Congressman Wilson over there. Hey, thank you for this guy's at everything. Yeah, that is a problem. That is a problem, and truth be told, we do our best to just address it and handle it as a case-by-case basis.
Jack, make it quick.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see anything along that about any of the animal abuse or dog fighting or that things. Do we not have any of that in Richland?
Come on now. He's throwing up softballs over here. Okay, so one of the things that, you know, quite frankly, I used to prosecute all the animal cases back when I was an assistant. I have 2 lawyers that work on that. I don't have it on there as a specific program. I also don't have, we have a lawyer that just does financial crimes as well. But yes, we do prosecute animal cases and deal with those. Truth be told, it's interesting because our SPCA, and I hope there's nobody in here in SPCA, but they used to have an investigator that would go out, and it's a lot more aggressive than it has been of recently. But we do have 2 people who do that, who prosecute animal cases.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all the questions we have time for. Who's creating all these programs to prevent and solve problems before they go to trial, and that's wonderful. Thank you for being here and doing what you do for our county on a regular basis. Small of you.
So next week we have Bob McAllister and Antoine Seawright. They're going to come in, and Hal Stevenson is going to kind of moderate a spirited election discussion looking at the election and beyond. So should be a really good meeting.
Everybody going to be ready for that? We're not going to let Rusty sing. Rusty doesn't get the time. All right. All of our musicians left, so you don't want to hear me sing, I promise you that. So we're going to dismiss it right now.